In May of 2022, I took the stage at the first ever North Bay Next gathering. I was the first keynote. Quite a lot of responsibility, but also an opportunity to define what this whole MSIV thing was all about. And I got up on stage and I talked about this idea that startup companies can be a key driver of the North Bay's economic future. That together, if we help boost local companies, we can ensure this community's economic future is much brighter than its past. And like any initial gathering, it was important that I laid out our values, what this whole community was all about and what we stand for. And the three values I talked about, they rang true then, but today, as we celebrate our 5th anniversary, they're ringing even more true today. The first is that this is a give-first community. What that means is that we ask all of you to show up to all of our events, not figuring out how to extract value for yourselves, but figuring out how you can help add value to someone else here in the room. Because if we all show up with that mentality, we're all going to go a lot further, a lot more quickly. Second, I talked about this being a startup community for our North Bay community. We're not trying to build Silicon Valley North, right? What we're trying to do is build a startup community for the North Bay, one that's collaborative, one that has founders that want to run globally important companies, but they don't want to do so at the expense of their family life and at the expense of being able to enjoy these incredible surroundings that we find ourselves living in. And I talked about this being an inclusive community. And yes, that obviously talks about the personal characteristics of everyone in this room. That should go without saying. But it's also inclusive in terms of the types of startups that we're helping and that we are supporting. Right? We want founders to come that are bootstrapping and founders that have raised hundreds of millions of dollars in financing. Right? We want founders to come who are building AI companies and med tech companies and food and beverage companies and consumer tech companies. We want first-time startup founders to feel welcome, and we want founders who are on their 3rd, 4th, and 5th startup journey to feel like this is the community for them. And with that, we set out to go build. Right? This is what the North Bay startup ecosystem looked like in April of 2020. We had all of the elements to have a robust startup community here in the North Bay, but we were not putting together the pieces. Incredible founders disconnected from each other. Mentors that could be tapped because the intellectual capital up here is off the charts, yet no opportunities for them to lean in to help local companies. No cohesive community, no gathering like North Bay Next to bring this community together. And even though these are 2 of the most affluent counties in the state, no pooled capital from this region dedicated to invest in the region. That was what this looked like in April of 2020. Fast forward to today, this community is unrecognizable. Our North Bay Founder Network has now leaned in and helped 395 local startup founders cumulatively on their journeys. Our executive network of C-level mentors, 75 of them have raised their hands saying they want to offer pro bono help to local startup companies and help them out in any way they can. We convene over 20 times a year, large gatherings like today and small micro gatherings, getting 8, 10 startup founders together for dinner in a private room throughout the North Bay. And from a capital standpoint, we successfully launched the first ever regional venture capital fund in the history of the North Bay's community. Our venture arm has now deployed $7.8 million into 19 local startup companies. We're doing this so that when everyone thinks about the North Bay, they don't just think about farm to table and mountain biking and wine and our incredible coastline. We want them to think about the incredible companies that have come out of here and that will come out of here. Up on the screen are 10 of the most successful startups to come out of this region over the last 50 years. Every single one of them have achieved valuations in the billions of dollars. B with a B, all North Bay companies. but they're not startups anymore. And when companies are no longer startups, they're no longer founder-led, they mature, they get acquired, they oftentimes can shift locations. Only 5 of these 10 companies are still here locally. So what we're busy doing is helping put that next generation of startup companies on the North Bay map. And literally last year we did just that. We released a map of the North Bay and we plotted 100 different startup companies in this region so that everybody could visualize, right, where all this innovation is physically happening around them in our environment. The 19 logos you see up on the screen are the 19 companies that we backed, that our venture arm is helping, working with them to hopefully become these next great North Bay companies. And it's starting to work. We have incredible stories, incredible proof points from this portfolio. I'll talk quickly about Fireaside, one of our portfolio companies that we backed in 2023. They make software for fire agencies to help communities keep them safer to the catastrophic risks of wildfire. On the back of incredible growth since we backed them, they opened a new office, and last fall, we hosted an office opening celebration for them in San Anselmo. This is a local company keeping our community safer and creating high-quality jobs here in the North Bay. That's exactly what we're talking about and why we're doing all this work. And this stage has also played a prominent role in helping us all figure out what's next. Dave Berger, our 2022 conference, talked about his startup journey, was one of our executive mentors. A year later, he called me and said, I have to stop mentoring because I'm a founder again. I'm back in the CEO chair. We backed his Santa Rosa-based startup company, Union Credit, and they've had incredible growth since then, winning multiple national awards and off to the races. A year later, Sarah Schaff took this stage in 2023, talked about her startup journey, running a company called Headnote. She's a professional startup CEO coach. Last year called me and said, hey, I can't mentor anymore either. I'm starting another company. And our venture arm backed her company Rivet last fall. So that's what's starting to happen, right? Is that these circles are moving, they're spinning. This North Bay startup flywheel has started to turn, has started to move. Founders are becoming mentors, or becoming investors, or becoming founders again. That's how we start building this economic future as a community. But what keeps me up at night, right? I'm really proud of everything we've accomplished here. But what keeps me up at night is that there is still so much work left to do if we are truly going to remake the economic future of Marin and Sonoma. And I like to think about these metrics because they help encapsulate the challenge as I see it. Intellectual capital, educational attainment more specifically. Marin County is the #1 county in the state in terms of bachelor's level attainment and graduate level educational attainment. Sonoma County in the top 3rd around the state. We have incredible amounts of talent living here in the community. But that intellectual capital is more often than not being invested back into the community's private sector. When you look at job growth and job creation, it's the exact opposite story. Marin County is 3rd to last in the state in job growth over the last 5 years. Sonoma County is 7th to last in the state. And when you're failing to create jobs in a community, you're failing to create an economic multiplier that benefits everybody in the community, that lifts people out of poverty, that creates the types of opportunities that young people want to stay here for, that they want to return back here for. That's why this matters. So where is that job growth going to come from? It's not going to come from the wine industry. And that's not to say that we're not proud, right, of our wine industry. We are. It's been a rough few years. Let's not shift off of that, but let's not have unrealistic expectations that that's where our growth is going to come from. If we maintain what we have on the wine side, that's a win. If we maintain what we have on the ag side, that is a win. But that's not where the future growth is going to come from. It's going to come from these. It's going to come from these graduates. It's going to come from young people feeling like they can come back to the North Bay and build businesses that ultimately hire other local people. It's going to come from innovators living in the community feeling like this is a community that they can build an enterprise in. That's what we need to focus on. And so while I step up on this stage today, very, very proud that we've now deployed this $7.8 million into the local startup community. While I'm very, very proud of that metric, it's just the beginning, and we need to think much, much bigger as a community about where this can go. Because if our goal is truly to remake this community, if we want to have downtown San Rafael filled with high-growth companies, if we want to have downtown Santa Rosa filled with high-growth companies, have our downtowns bustling, the 2 county seats and every other town around them, we need to do a heck of a lot more than 7.8 million. We need to unlock like a real amount of money to build our future. And that's a big number up on the screen, $100 million. But like, are we serious about this or are we not? Are we going to build the future or are we going to let the future just happen to us? The consequences be what they may. And before you think that, Zach, these are just 2 small counties, like how are we going to unlock that amount of money? That goes back to like the vision piece of this. We need to think bigger. Marin and Sonoma, if you just looked at these 2 counties, this 101 corridor area, the 2 counties, we have a greater economic footprint than 2 small U.S. states, Vermont and Wyoming. We have more GDP and more people. And if our North Bay region is an example of a region that's been underinvesting in itself, I want to talk for a second about Vermont, because that's an example of a location that's, punching way above its weight in terms of what it's doing to invest in its future. Their state treasurer's office has a 10% in Vermont initiative, right? They can loan up to 10% of their daily cash balance for low interest loans to help support the construction of housing. Yes, they have a housing crisis there just like we do here. That's unlocked $130 million for that community to help build more housing and to promote economic development since 2023. The state itself in 2024 announced that it's allocating $29 million into 3 local venture capital funds. Yes, Vermont has 3 venture capital funds focused on the state of Vermont. And before you think they must have more investable startup companies than we do here, PitchBook data says the opposite. According to PitchBook, this 2-county region has 2.5 times the investable opportunities than does the state of Vermont. So that's what we're talking about in terms of thinking bigger. Even bringing this back to California and closer to home. This is the California Jobs First Initiative, a state-run program meant to help spur local job creation. Last year, that initiative deployed $80 million into 7 different regions around the state to support job creation. We mentioned Marin and Sonoma being laggards in job creation. None of that money from last year came here locally. That's what I'm talking about when I say thinking bigger. This isn't an MSIV issue. This isn't a governmental issue. This is the whole community coming together, the private sector, the public sector, and the nonprofit sector, all coming together, going after state funding, going after federal funding, tapping private funding to build our future. So I want to get back up here. We're celebrating 5 years today. I want to get back up here on our 10th birthday, 5 years from now, and talk about how MSIV played a role in helping unlock the type of capital that's going to build this community's future. And every single person in the room has a role to play in this movement we're talking about. If you're a local entrepreneur, don't build a company in the city. Don't build a company nowhere. Build it here. Build it locally. If you invest, yeah. Thank you. If you invest locally. Break off 1-2% of your portfolio. Invest that in Marin and Sonoma Enterprise. And it doesn't have to be in startups or venture capital. It could be in a local restaurant. It could be in a local small business. But let's start investing locally. If you have intellectual capital to give, mentor and guide a local founder. There are dozens of them in the room today. Please seek them out and figure out how you can help them. If you're a worker or startup operator, go out of your way to try to make that next role be for a company that's headquartered here. And the last piece, everyone's already doing this, keep showing up. Because by showing up, we're bringing this movement to a point where we can bring everything together, and as a collective unit, we can all push forward to build our future. Thank you so much for being here. I'm so excited. We appreciate it. Thank you.